Chapter 8, Clothing, the story, a social history which we are going to study now. The story of how the cloth got evolved, that we all studied in the previous classes. But here we will see how the dressing style got modified. Before, the societies always followed certain rules and regulations, like for men, for women and for children. As the time passed on, the dressing has become an identity for certain groups of people. It is a notion of grace and beauty for some sections of the society, and the ideas of modesty and even shame. All these were interconnected with the dressing style or the clothes of the people. As the changes have occurred in the society, the modifications have also touched the dressing styles of the people. If you remember carefully, the changes have occurred mainly in the 19th and the 20th centuries. Why these two centuries are very important? These two centuries are important because during this period only larger changes have occurred in the ideas of the people, not in the dressing styles. Because the mindsets of the people started to change, the dressing styles are also varies according to the situations and the change of the society of that period. Now, dressing now represents in the 19th century the class, the gender and the status of a group in the society. But as the 20th century has another shape or another side of the coin of clothing, the concept of democracy start to reach across various corners of the globe. So now this democracy started to reach to various corners. The Western dressing style of men and women also started to reach to various corners, and everybody started to adopt the Western style of dressing. So that's why there are significant changes in the 19th and the 20th century. That is the reason why these two centuries are very important when it comes to the history of clothes. It's very easy for all of us to forget that even clothes have history. Let us find out. In chapter 1, we have discussed about the French Revolution, where these changes also swept or attacked first the French society. So how the changes have come, what are the changes that have come in the French society, we will now discuss. Now, moving on to understand what are the Suntory Laws. The Suntory Laws are the laws which are made to be followed by the French society for more than 500 years. What are those laws? Those are from 1294 to 1789. The French society was following the rules like social inferiors are not allowed to wear certain clothes and not allowed to consume certain beverages, especially alcohol. So the society was controlled. The people were not allowed to use certain material. It was in the medieval period. The social status of a person, basing on that, the cloth is fixed. That social status person only can use only that particular cloth. Like for example, in the medieval period, they are having for the aristocrats, means the rich people can use ermine, fur, silk, velvet and brocade cloths. These cloths are prohibited for the other sections of the second estate or the third estate people. This shows clearly for us that here there was a clear social cut division among them, and that has been regulated by the control of dress code. Now, in the French Revolution or after the French Revolution, the Suntory Laws were thrown off, and now we got the sans-culottes who are without the knee breeches. The Jacobin clubs declared openly that they want to follow according to their comfort and they want to break the social barriers of clothing. That is, men and women now started to wear the loose and the comfortable cloth of dressing according to their style, and blue, white and red become the symbol of patriotic citizens. These colored dresses became very famous in the French society, and the red cap started to symbolize the liberty, while as a long trouser started to symbolize for their freedom, and cockade pinned onto a hat, that is for their revolutionary struggle against the French domination of the estates. This all we can see how they started to use a clothing to set equality in the society. Now, the clothing and the notions of beauty. The social strata differences remained in the French society, though the French Revolution questioned the privileges given by birth, but the differences between the rich and the poor continued. The rich and the poor started to have their own way of dressing. The rich started to develop according to their interest, whether it is beautiful or ugly, whether it is proper or improper, whether it is decent or vulgar. It doesn't matter to them. They started to develop their own notion of dressing. Let us see how it changed. Men in the French society were trained from the younghood to be like strong, independent and aggressive in nature, while women have differences like they are groomed to be docile and dutiful, they are to be submissive and obedient, and also pain and suffering. Those who can take pains and sufferings were considered as idle women. Now, what is the relation with this and to the dressing? Yes, when the girls are young, they were dressed when they were small, they were dressed with the laced and tightly dressed stays. After they grow little bit higher, or when they become to mature levels, then they get to the dresses of corsets, which are again tightly fit for them. And they also would appreciate the girls or the women who have small waists, because they consider them as elegant, attractive and submissive. So they used to admire the ladies or the women who have a small waist. So now from this we can understand that the dressing of the girl will symbolize her, whether she is submissive or not, whether she is beautiful or not. These all are interconnected with the way she dresses. Now, women's reactions for this. Women started to believe that these are the ideals of women. They strongly believe that as a woman, we have to be like this only. We are born to be like this only. What are they compulsory for them? Because the air they breathe, the education they received, the literature they read, everything symbolizes them to be as an ideal woman. As a woman, we are born, so we naturally get pains. We have to suffer pains. We have to have a small waist. That is compulsory to be as a womanly nature. And we should be attractive, so we have to put on corset. So these all are imbibed in every young child as they are young. They are being imbibed into their brains that they have to be like this only. They should not allow the body to grow freely. They have to put them dressed in tight dresses so that they look thin, slim. Now, in 1830s, women start to agitate on the democratic lines. They want equal movement with the men. They want equal right to vote with men. So the suffrage movement started. At the same time, many of the young women gave the complaints that they are ill. The blood circulation is getting blocked and they are having acute weaknesses. Some felt languished and fainted. So all these are also the effects of the tightly dressed corsets, and the spine is also getting weakened. Ultimately, they come up to a solution saying that because the spine is weakened, now we need corset to hold that. So it is not positively taken. Yes, women are taking it positively, but biologically they are facing many problems. Their body is having many pains because they are dressed like that. They were tied up so tightly that blood circulation cannot go freely and the body cells cannot grow. So these all started to restrict their growth. So these are the negative effects of the tight dressing in women. Now, how was the reaction in America? We will find out now. Women's reaction in United States of America, that is on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Feminine clothes, which are very long skirts, objected, or it's very difficult for the women because they are very voluminous and difficult to hold them, and they prevent the women working and earning something. They also believed that if women's dress is shortened, short skirts were implemented, and these corsets are abandoned, then women can work and earn her livelihood and she can be independent. But it was not accepted. In 1870s, the National Women's Suffrage Association, headed by Mrs. Stanton, and American Women's Suffrage Association, headed by Lukey Stone, both fought for the dress reforms. So they asked for the shorten of the skirts and to abandon the corsets. If these two are done, women can work freely and can earn her livelihood and she can be independent. But they received very strong opposition from the revolutionaries or the conservatives who are present there. They criticize that if woman is not dressed in tight and she doesn't look beautiful, then she loses her femininity, and it is a big blow for the womanhood. So with this severe criticism, many of them went back to their traditional dressing style. But as the time passed on in the early 19th century, the new ideas started to breathe in and the new values started to come in. Now the look, because of the clothes, started to give a fade off, because it is not the matter of clothes that gives the beauty. It is the internal beauty and the comfort of the people that makes them to live happily. So now it is though it got initial rejection, later it got accepted and people started to have new ideas, new values, acceptance started to gain ground. The new times, with the availability of new material and new technologies in British, it has become possible for the new changes in the dressing style. What are the reasons that made them to accept the new changes? That is, the world wars, the two world wars made the women to work compulsory. So the necessity of the women to work made them to dress according to their convenience. So the working conditions of the women, these two are the main facilitating factors. Moving further ahead, in 17th century, most of the women used the cloth made of flax, linen and wool, which was very difficult to wash and to maintain. And as the time passed on in the 16th century ending, where they got the contacts of the trade with the India for the Britishers, now they got a cloth which is cheap, beautiful and easy to maintain, that is Indian chintegs. These Indian chintegs are actually, looking at the impact, the wardrobes of the European countries' women started to grow their size, because these are very beautiful, very attractive for them and very convenient and very easy to wash. Then in the 20th century, the artificial fibers, which started to be more cheaper and easy to wash, added to their easy dressing style. In 1870s, there was heavy restriction in the underclothes which are worn by them, but later slowly they are being discarded, and now we got replaced with lighter, shorter and simpler undergarment clothes. And later we also have in 1914, the skirt length was up to the ankle. Till the medieval period also we have seen that one. But from 1915, the hemline of the skirt started to rise up to the mid calf. So how these all changes are possible? We will check. War. Why the sudden changes happened for the dressing styles of women? We can check, that is here. Women were actually giving up the attitude of wearing jewelry and the luxurious clothes. The upper class women started to give up the attitude of wearing the jewelry and the luxury clothes. Why? Because they also now started to live up with the normal middle class people. They started to mix up themselves with the other society groups. Because of the world war, many of them need to work. Many of them economy came down. Many of their assets values came down. So now they need to survive, so they need to work. Clothes became very shorter during the World War I period of 1914 to 1918. You can see an example here. In 1917, 7 lakh women were appointed in the ammunition factory, where their uniforms were blouse and a trouser with a scarf, and later that got replaced with a khaki uniform and caps. So it has been necessary to make the dress code plainer and simpler. The new schools which came in the 20th century started to inculcate the attitude of plain and austere style. This austere style of living is necessary, because in the new schools from the childhood onwards, they started to teach to be plain, simple and no to ornamentation, no wearing up of the ornaments. So like this, women are now taking part with the games and sports. So the clothing should not be a restriction for the women to participate in the games and sports. So with this we can understand that the history of clothing is directly connected with the history of the society. How the dominant groups of the society used to portray their culture and ideas through the dressing style. Moving on to find out what happened in India during that period of time when the dressing pattern is changing in Great Britain, changing all around Europe, changing across the other side of Atlantic in United States. What is happening in the colonial India? Let us see now. The transformation in the colonial India, when the cloth and clothing is being considered as an important symbol for the Indian national movement at that point of time. For the modern ways of dressing, the Indian people reacted in three different ways. First, the men started to imbibe their quality of Western dressing, adopt the Western dressing by taking the baggy trousers or the baggy pants, the fenta, the hats, and also the coats, the collarless coats. These all they started to adopt, and they started to feel, mostly the community which got converted into Christianity started to feel that they are liberated and they want to have that modernity, and they feel that they are the symbol of modernity and they are in the journey of progress. So they are progressing towards ahead of modernity. Second group reacted it as it leads to the loss of the culture. They have seen that world is going to turn upside down. Bengalis used to criticize it very severely. So the second group reacted it in the importance of Indian culture. They saw that Indian culture is going to be destroyed because of the Western dressing style. Third group, that is the third group which is in a dilemma whether to follow the first one or the second one. They resolve the dilemma by simply matching these two. They wear the Western clothes as well as not giving up wearing the Indian clothes also. So they have the habit of wearing Western as well as the Indian clothes as per requirements. Most of the times, whenever it is necessary to work outside, they used to prefer to put on the Western clothes, and where they are at their homes or casual times, they used to be in the Indian traditional dresses. So like this, there was a long history in the change of the dresses, which is a turbulent history. Caste conflicts and the dress changes. We have to observe here, India doesn't have sumptuary laws as that in France, but still India has its own set of social codes of food and dresses, which prohibited the lower caste people to consume certain amounts of food and certain kind of dresses. In 1822, women of Shahnar were attacked by the Nayanars, and they used to feel that the Shahnars are also known as Nadars, were the subordinates to the Nayars, and these Nayars considered them as subordinate caste only. They also forced the women not to wear any modern dresses, and they never ever allowed even women to cover up their upper body parts, and they always prohibited men or women to put on clothes like on their upper body parts, shoes or any kind of gold ornaments. So because they should be like that only dressed, as they are subordinates to Nayars. They also call these as local rules, and everybody should confine themselves to follow the local rules. Christian missionaries. When the Christian missionaries stepped in, many of the women of Shahnar who got converted into Christianity start to dress up themselves by putting on blouses and clothes on their upper parts of the body, which was not accepted at all by the Nayars. They, even Ayya Vaikandar, who also participated in the dress reform, also said that we need the dresses to be modified, and there is no compulsory on the basis of the caste that they have to dress. They have to dress as per their necessity and requirement and to cover their bodies, but not according to their birth of the caste system. Now, Nayars again attacked the women publicly. Whoever covered their upper parts, they used to tear off the upper cloth of the woman. Like this, very violently, the Nayars used to react. So what happened then? How did the women protest? What were the consequences of this? The government of Travancore in 1829 gave a referendum, a notice that it gave a judgment saying that they abstained women from further covering the upper parts, but the women did not follow this one. Not only the Christian women, but also the Hindu women also of the Shahnar community or the Nadar community started to wear on the blouses and continue. In 1855, the abolition of the slavery was again passed by the government. This frustrated the upper caste because they are leaving their hold or they are losing their hold over the society. The domination will be reduced if the slavery is abolished. And later, in 1859 October, the riots broke out when the upper caste people Nayars attacked the Nadar women and tore off the cloth on the upper part of their bodies, which is covering their upper parts of the bodies, was really horrible. And they even entered the houses, destroyed the houses and burned the chapels. These all situations made the government to react firmly and passed a new proclamation stating that the women of Nadar community can also wear the jacket in any manner and whatever. That should not be same as that of the jacket which is put on by the higher caste women. There should be some difference between the high caste women's dressing style and the lower caste women's dressing style. With this, we come to the end of the dressing society in our country, where the domination was there basing on the caste system. Now we move on to the British dressing style. Now, moving on to understand the British rules and the dress code in comparison with the Indian style of dressing. Indians generally wear a turban, which is a religious ritual and it cannot be removed as per the will. It is a respect and it is a tradition followed by a particular religious community. When it comes to the hat, hat is worn by the Britishers just as a fashion and it is removed off when there are social superiors present. Now moving into the details of the conflict. Indians and the Britishers used to visit India regularly. So in order to differentiate the Indians and the Britishers, they started to call the turban wearers and the hat wearers. As the time passed on, Britishers now started to consider turban equal to that of hat, as hat can be removed and it is a compulsory that has to be removed when there are social superiors above them. But when it comes to turban, they started to apply the same rules, asking to them and saying that whenever they enter the courtrooms or whenever they enter any government officials' offices or anything, they have to remove their turbans, which the Indians firmly resisted that, saying that this is not a fashion, this is our religious tradition and custom which upholds our respect, so we cannot do that. This was the first issue where Indian dressing style was in controversy with the Britishers' dressing style. Indians have the turban not for fashion, whereas Britishers used to have the hat just only for fashion. So that was a major difference. And moving on to the next one, the turban is also later started to be identified as a national identity and it's not as a national fashion. Moving on further, Indian etiquette. Indian etiquette was another important controversial issue between the Britishers and the Indians. That is, in 1830, European people were prohibited wearing the Indian clothes. Actually, Indian etiquette was a normal custom which they used to wear, and they used to put on the shoes. Whenever Indians enter into any holy places or anywhere, they used to remove their shoes and they used to enter. But when it comes to entering into any government offices, the Indians were not allowed to enter into the government offices and they are forced to remove the shoes, which really worried the people. And in 1830, Europeans till that time used to wear the Indian traditional dress wear also. Europeans were strictly prohibited to put on the Indian clothes during the traditional meets, whichever happens, or the official meets, whatever happens, so that the dignity of the white man is not reduced. And moving further, from 1824 to 1828, the then Governor General Amherst made a rule that Indians have to show off when they are entering into the government offices or whenever they come to meet him. But he did not implement this strictly. But later, who succeeded him, Lord Dalhousie, made it a very strict rule that the Indians are forced to remove their shoes before they enter into any government offices, which was really worrying for many of the Indian civil servants also. And only the people, those who are dressed themselves in the European style, were allowed to put the shoes themselves. A big defense happened in 1862 when in Surat, Manok Ji, an assessor, refused to remove his shoes when he entered into the court. Well, the court ordered him to remove the shoes. He remained adamant and he did not respond to this. With this, the angry judge asked him to leave the court and sent a notice to the High Court of the Governor General of Bombay. So with this, it has become a common comparison that when Indians are entering into a holy place, they generally remove off their shoes. Then why are they not removing when they are entering into the government offices? For this, the explanation is very clear and straight. First, the shoes have the dirt and they also have the filth. The dirt and the filth. When you are entering into a holy place, the dirt should be removed off when you are entering into a clean place. And next, filth, which is polluting, that should be left out. That too, when in India, in the temples, we have the custom of sitting down and also sitting along with the family members or entering into the homes. So there we cannot use the shoes which are having dirt and filth, which are causing harm and creating pollution for us. So this is different. When it is come to entering into the offices, where it's not a holy place, it is a general office where number of people work. So how can we compare both of them together? This issue started to go to a very long discussion, and courtrooms are no more considered as holy places. It took a very long time to allow the people to come into the court with the shoes. This is the difference between the British rule and Indian dress code. Now moving on to the designing of the national dress of India. If you look at France, the Suntory Laws prohibited the lower class to put on certain kind of dresses. There were restrictions. So in the similar way, to break that one, Jacobins have adopted the sans-culottes, where they started to have the knee breeches completely covering them, free trousers and everything. So in the similar way, in the similar lines, for India also, they want to have these kind of a dress code for the entire country. On the issue of this only, the issue of the cultural symbols which symbolize the unity of the nation are to be designed. So first, the poets start to write the national songs. Vande Mataram came on this one momentum only. Then we have the national flag, which has the national dresses start to be designed. The efforts were made at different parts of our country to portray or to have the pan-Indian dressing style. That is, in 1870s, the Rabindranath Tagore's family has combined the styles of Hinduism and Islam religion of Muslims and made chapkan, the long buttoned coat, which is a combination of Hindu and Muslim traditions together, was a perfect dress for men. And moving on further, in 1870s, Gnananandini Devi, wife of Satyendranath Tagore, who was a former ICS officer, adopted the Parsi style of sari, where it has been pinned to the left hand side and she used to dress like that. That dress has been adopted by Brahma Samaji women and it started to spread in many parts of Maharashtra and in other regions. But these efforts could not succeed because in Gujarat, in Kerala, in other parts, they start to dress differently. So the efforts to have a pan-Indian dress style could not succeed in the initial years. Moving on to the Swadeshi movement. Why we are studying about the political movement in clothing lesson? Yes, the Swadeshi movement is closely connected with the clothing of the Britishers. The Britishers came to India initially to do trade. In 17th century, India was manufacturing cloth goods of 1/4 for the entire world's requirements. So India has 1/4 of the manufacturing setup and structure in India. Only in Bengal in 18th century we have 10 lakh people who are weavers. And we also have many industries, weaving industries set up near Calcutta, Maharashtra, Machilipatnam, Surat and other places. So only in Bengal we have 10 lakh weavers. And moving on, because of industrial revolution, now the new machines are invented. The replacement has been done from the man-made goods to machine-made goods. So now the Britishers require huge amount of raw materials like cotton and indigo. As they established the control over India, now they started to take the advantage of this in two ways. One, the availability of the raw material abundantly. They forced the Indian farmers to cultivate indigo and cotton. They changed the coarser crops, grains, into their favorite crops of cotton and indigo. Now the Indian farmers have no other choice left out other than cultivating cotton and indigo. Now moving further ahead, The other advantage what they have is India has become a large market to sell their products what they have produced. Raw material is supplied from India and the finished product can be brought back and sold in India extensively. So these are the two major advantages what the British has got because of occupying India. And in 1905, when Lord Curzon decided to do partition of Bengal, then the real momentum started. The boycott of the goods was a weapon used by the Indians. They boycotted all the British goods for many years. The rich people also have taken the turns. They have stick to Kadhi to portray the patriotic feeling, and slowly after 15 years the rich people started to use the Western cloth. They started to change themselves into the Western dressing style, because however the feeling of patriotism is there, the cheap cloth which is available from the Britishers has no competition matching with the Indian cloth requirement. And this gave an idea to Gandhiji that symbolic weapon of nationalism is nothing but clothing. Britishers goods, when they are boycotted, automatically the effect can be shown on the economy of the Britishers, and the Indian patriotic feelings also can be generated on a very large scale, for which he has seen as an experimental basis in Bengal. Gandhiji's momentum with the cloth. How did Gandhiji experiment and use it as a weapon to fight against the Britishers and to give a stiff resistance for the British colonial rule? Now we will see here. Whenever we talk about Gandhiji, we generally get the image of Gandhiji, that Gandhiji with a bare chest, with a short dhoti, spinning the mill of charaka and making Kadhi. This is the image what we get generally and regularly about Gandhiji. But when did Gandhiji adopt this kind of dress style or this kind of dress code? We will just go into the details now. A boy who was from Gujarati Baniya family, who used to dress himself in shirt and dhoti, who went on putting on coat, the Western dressing style, who studied law in London, and who cut off his tuft so that the others would not laugh, and dress himself in the Western style at the age of 19 years in the year 1888, and he always appeared in the Western suits. Even in 1890, when he started to work as a lawyer in the Johannesburg of South Africa, there also he dressed himself in the Western dresses. So when did he adopt of this kind of non-Western dressing style? For the first time, he appeared without shirt in Durban in 1913. That is in lungi and kurta, where for the first time he was dressed in a traditional Indian attire addressing an issue that was against the authorities who have shooted the Indian coal miners. So he is showing his resistance. So this made him to feel that the traditional dress will have more impact than the Western dress. When Gandhiji returned back to India in 1915, he decided to dress himself as the Kathiawadi peasant, which is a symbol of normal traditional dress. And later in 1921 only, he adopted to have the short dhoti, which he continued till the rest of his life until his death. It was the date on 22nd of September 1921. A year later, after the non-cooperation movement was announced, he declared that I am going to practice wearing the short dhoti and not wearing anything on the chest, so that I don't want to give any message without preparing myself and to know whether really can I practice it or not. So this made him special from the other leaders. He always give suggestions which he followed first, and which he found that is it practically possible or not. Once he confirms that it can be done practically, then only he starts to advise the others. That is an example given for us from his words here. Up to 31st of October was his first initial intention, but later he continued it till the rest of the life. He also found that this is the dress of the poorest Indian. Along with this, the Kadhi also made a symbol for purity. He considered himself to be pure when he dresses like this. It also symbolizes him to be simple, simplicity, and the symbol of poverty. He gets connected with the poor people whenever he dresses like this. And it is also acted now as a symbol of nationalism, as he is rejecting the western mill cloth, which he initially used to put on before he took up this oath. And even in 1931, when he went to attend the round table conferences at the Buckingham Palace to meet King George V, the officials asked him to put on the dress or the shirt, which he initially used to put when he studied their law. Then when the journalist asked it, he just made a joke saying that, yes, the king has enough on him which is sufficient for both of us. So like this, he softly rejected, and he continued to put on his dress in a similar way. Khadi, is it suitable for all? No, it is not suitable for all. Gandhi initially thought Khadi would be the symbol of patriotism. Khadi would be the symbol of purity, simplicity, and it would portray the spirit of nationalism. But it could not be connected very well with all the others because there are many issues. What are those issues? First, Nehru, a successful barrister from Allahabad, adopted himself to the Indian dhoti and kurta, but he did not use the same coarse cloth. He used the different cloth. And next, moving to the Dalits who were suppressed, who faced the social inequality, never gave up the Western style of dressing. They thought it is their self-respect, and Ambedkar never gave up dressing himself in suits. And moving on, Dalits in 1910, early 1910s used to dress themselves in three-piece suits because they also marked it as a symbol of their self-respect, not a spirit of nationalism. And in 1928, women wrote from Maharashtra to Mahatma Gandhiji a letter stating that, "My dear Gandhi, I heard you giving a speech asking all of us to stick to the Kadhi dresses and Kadhi saris. But my husband says Kadhi is really very costly, and to get a 9-yard cloth of Kadhi is very expensive for a poor family like us. And if we restrict ourselves to 6 yards, the elders would not agree. So how to find out a solution for this?" Yes, it is a really problem for the poor to buy Kadhi even today. Next, Sarojini Naidu and Kamala Nehru always dressed in colored saris with the printed borders. And then changes in the clothing system gives us not only the idea how the dressing style has changed, but it also gives us the concept of understanding how there is a shift in the cultural tastes, in the notions of beauty, and how it has been influencing the society. There were always been issues or conflicts between the social and the political concerns. So the history of clothing reveals us how the changes have happened in clothing will not only show the changes in the dressing styles, but also reveals how the time has changed for the people from one kind of dressing style to the other kind, and how did the society react to that, how did the political movements happen, how are they interconnected, how did they conclude, what are the changes that happened, how the society got changed, what was the influence of that over the market, what about the industries. So all these factors can also be assessed when we study about the history of clothing. So history of clothing reveals for us changes in the clothing dress style, shift in the cultural taste, notions of the beauty, and social and political conflicts.
If you like this video, please give a thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel to get more videos on CBSE syllabus.